Okay, so I've officially completed A Botanist's Guide to Parties and Poisons by Kate Kavari, and I'm a little conflicted because I didn't not enjoy reading the story, but I also it was okay. Like I would rate it like 3.5 stars. I rated it 3 stars on Goodreads. So in the end, it turned out that the um, department head who had been harassing Saffron and a guy who was actually an impersonator, who was actually a very famous con artist, they were embezzling money from the university, and I felt like it wasn't that everything was far fetched. I just wish I had a little bit more detail. So, upon finding out that this was actually the author's debut novel, this does make a lot more sense. I found that the writing itself was quite good. Like it was good writing. It was easy to read. It was a pleasant experience. However, when it came to the plot and the execution of the book, I wish there was a bit more mystery in the like laying of the like groundwork of it. So what I'm talking about is there is a scene where Saffron and Alexander sneak into the department head's garden really late at night to try to find out if he created a hybrid of wolfsbane to mimic the poisonous plant that Dr. Maxwell discovered to frame him for the poisoning of Mrs. Dr. Henry. I wish that it was that scene and then a couple of other like snooping scenes where Saffron was sneaking into people's offices and stuff. I just found her attitude to be a little bit reckless. I found like she was a very like cheery, optimistic protagonist. I think she brought a lot of light to the story. But I also found that she was a little bit impulsive and reckless, and this was mostly seen by when in our last checkup I said that she had dosed herself with the poisonous plant that her professor discovered to disprove that it was the poison used to poison Mrs. Dr. Henry because she wanted to document it herself. It was later brought up that this was a very reckless and impulsive thing for her to do, and that she could have died if she was wrong, but she wasn't because, of course, then the story would end right there. I just found that a lot of the things that happened in the story were as a result of circumstance, or they just happened not to get caught. I also thought it was really annoying that Saffron and Alexander were doing their own little miniature investigations while the cops weren't doing anything, and they were like just going and reporting to the police immediately about what they did. And it's at one point they're threatened with, they might get arrested for obstruction of justice or intervening in a police investigation, because that's a very real thing that they were doing. They were just taking it into their own hands. I almost wish that the police had kind of tried to use Saffron as a mole to try to figure out what was happening. Like in the scene when Alexander and Saffron sneak into Dr. Birkin's garden, I wish instead that there was another party. That was another thing. There was one party in the entire book. It was parties and poisons. There was one party and two poisons. But I wish there was a party at Dr. Birkin's house or Birking's house that she was persuaded to go to, and she snuck into the garden there, and she was kind of like a mole for the police and working with them, instead of having to, every time she found a piece of information that she wasn't supposed to be looking for in the first place, she went directly to the cops. And I just thought that it was circumstantial because anybody else would have gotten in trouble for it. Like, she makes a lot of decisions that were just not very smart. I found Alexander to be about as interesting as a piece of toast. I did not find him interesting at all. I could not even like picture what he looked like in my head. He just kind of went along with whatever Saffron wanted to do because he thought that she was like cheery and optimistic and cute. But like, that was about it. I thought I wanted a little bit more of the STEMinist vibe where I was enjoying like the plant talk and like looking in the greenhouses and all the science talk. I was really enjoying that. But I wish I had a little bit more of that. And I wish that he had a bigger role in the story as somebody who studies bacteria, if that was a little bit more part of it. If like bacteria had a role in the hybridization of the two plants that Dr. Birking used to make that that more toxic form of wolfsbane. Also, in the end, when Dr. Maxwell is sent on a sabbatical to kind of take a break from academia, Saffron thinks that she's going to get sacked, when in actuality, there's a new research position that's opened for her. I honestly thought that there were some seeds laying that like she could have started working for the cops as like a liaison with the university, if there was any sort of like program that she could be doing to like um start to identify other poisons that could be used, because she makes a comment about how the pathology expert with the police only knows about arsenic and something else and doesn't really know about all the different ways that people can be poisoned by common household items or plants and stuff. So I almost wish that she was like involved in more in landmark studies of her own to discover more of these poisons that could be in turn used like in solving crime. Maybe that'll be in the second book. The second book is going to come out in June 2023. That's in 8 months. So maybe I'll pick it up if I want to continue the story. But as of right now, I have a pretty tepid response to the book. Like, it was very fast paced. I think that more could have been done. I think that it could have been not developed more. Like, I think in general the plot is fine, but I think that more could have been done with the investigating to really heighten the suspense, or more seeds being planted. Like, when I want to pick up a mystery, I want to think about there's a moment where the main character like has this like epiphany of something that happened that was inconspicuous, half a book ago, and they didn't even think about it, and now it's like all coming to light. I found that there really was no surprise as to who was responsible. Maybe in the end of like who poisoned who and for what, like that was hard to guess. Because we thought that Mrs. Dr. Henry was mad that her husband was having a lot of affairs, when in actuality she was discovering that there was an embezzlement scheme going on. So she was the actual intended person to be poisoned. So I just wish that I feel like it could have been there was more that could have been done, more that could have been said, more seeds that could have been planted. It was just a lot of Saffron, like every chapter, Saffron like running around to all these different academic offices, breaking into them and looking through a lot of files and being in the library a lot and having a lot of meetings. Like, she just had a lot of meetings and stuck into a lot of offices, and that was really about it. There was really not anything more. I feel like there could have been more than just like standard like magnifying glass to a paper detective work, where there was a stakeout, but a party where they were investigating. Like I said, like they went into the garden and they found something by happenstance. Like, I wish that there was a party. This is what I wish that would have happened. I wish there was a party at Dr. Birking's house, and Saffron was convinced to go, even though she didn't want to. And she wanders into the garden to get some air, and she wanders into the back corner where the altered wolfsbane is, and she finds it on accident. Like, I wish she would have found it on accident instead of kind of putting two and two together. When she sneaks into Birking's office and hides under his desk, she finds some old files of her father's work that was about hybridization and increasing the yield of plants, like certain chemicals of plants. So it was almost looking at, how to make plants more poisonous. So I almost wish that she would have happened upon some of this by accident. She kind of did by finding the papers in Birking's office, but I wish it was even more of an accident that this was discovered. It was quite a shock that her father was kind of inadvertently involved, and this was used against her later. But in the end, it was just like unsurprising. It was not suspenseful. It was not thrilling. I feel like more could have been added to the tone to do so. It was just extremely straightforward. And that's a very long-winded way to say that, I rated it 3.5 stars. I might pick up the second book. I might not. I'm not like, oh my God, this was so good, I need to pick up the second book now. Like, I really only I felt that for A Court of Thorns and Roses. I felt that for The Bridge Kingdom, where I was like, I need to pick up the second book now. But then I had to wait because I wanted to do a Sequel Saturday video about it. So I'm just going to close it off there. I'm going to start listening to the audio for The Essex Serpent. It is apparently 15 hours long before you start speeding it up. So I'm going to go ahead and start listening to that ASAP because it may take me about a good 2-3 days to get through it. I'm off today, tomorrow, and Wednesday, so I'll hopefully get through it while I'm doing World of Warcraft stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and start on that, and I will let you know how I begin to feel about it. I'm a little nervous. I had no idea that it was an Apple TV show until I saw the title and until I saw the placard for the audiobook on Libby, and the description of the book interests me, so maybe I'll get an Apple Plus subscription and watch the series after this. But I could always just say that because Tom Hiddleston is in it, but whatever. But I will update you guys when I have something more to say. This may be our only Monday check-in. Tomorrow I have really nothing else planned. I have really nothing going on this week besides my job interview on Thursday, so I need to film this week's video, but it's going to be a gaming video instead of a booktube video to kind of give me a chance to catch up on some of these books. So we'll see, but I'll check in with you guys later. Hello. It has been a few days. Today is Thursday. On the days where I wanted to make updates, I didn't want to because it was really late at night. So I am about 60% of the way through The Essex Serpent right now. And I've been listening to it on audiobook, and I gotta admit, it is not what I anticipated. It is pretty long, too. I think when I actually, because I sped it up, it's about 1.7 or 1.8 speed right now. It was 15 hours, and then it'll be brought down to like 8.5 hours of listening time by the time I'm getting through it. The best way that I can describe this book is, this is a book that your English teacher is going to assign to you when you're like a junior or a senior in high school. There's a lot of imagery, there's a lot of metaphor, there's a lot of allegory. This is literature. This is not YA. This is not like anything normal. This is literature. This is like Charles Dickens-esque shit. The writing is gorgeous. Honestly, comparing it to like a Charles Dickens-esque storytelling is probably comparable. It's got that caliber. It is a little difficult sometimes. Like I am a little like in the audio experience having to go back a little bit because it is quite flowery, exorbitant, but it is not overindulgent in the words that in the language. It is just, it's telling several stories, not just one. So I'm finding a lot of metaphors between like faith and science and mythology and history, and there's a lot of opposites happening. So we start out with our heroine named Cora. She is a widow. Her husband has just died. He was abusive towards her, and she has a son named Francis. He's alluded to be on the autism spectrum. He's described as neurotic, but I don't like the usage of that word. But he is very particular. He likes things done a certain way. He has certain interests. He doesn't like people very much. Cora is not particularly close to her son, but she does love him and does care for him and knows all of his little quirks and the things that would make him happy because he likes routine and, the things that he likes. And she also has her, I don't want to say maid, but like her son's governess, essentially. Her name is Martha. There's a little bit of a, like, I honestly thought they were just like lesbians because there was a little bit of queer baiting going on. The relationship between Cora and Martha was, honestly, I thought they were gonna just fall in love because Martha seems to have an attachment to Cora that is quite profound, and the way that their interactions are described and the way that they have spent private time together, and how Cora basically used Martha in her grief to, like, as a person that was there for her. They like slept in the same bed together. They seemed like two little lesbians. I don't know, like, what you want me to say. I thought this was going to turn sapphic, and I was ready for it, but then all of a sudden it didn't turn out that way. So at the point where I'm at right now, a couple of people have died out in Essex. Cora, her son, and Martha go out to Essex because Cora has developed a love for paleontology. So, like, her husband left all of his money to her so she can kind of just do whatever the fuck she wants. So they leave London society, which Martha is not very happy about, and they go to Essex, where Cora wants to kind of like fuck around in the dirt and find some fossils, and she befriends a local reverend and his wife, and they have a lot of discussions about like history and religion, because the reverend is very pious, and he believes in the, I believe it's alluded to like the whole earth being only 6,000 years old thing that the Bible says. So he's very like literal when it comes to the Bible. But there was a scene where she finds a fossil and she says it could be millions of years old, and he's very skeptical about this. So there's a bit of a like opposites thing between the two of them, where she is very like a non-traditional and unorthodox for a woman of her time, and she's a widow doing whatever the fuck she wants, and she wants to do like paleontology as a hobby. And then he's a very, very pious religious man who respects what she's doing, but he doesn't necessarily believe in it, and they are learning from each other. The relationship between them is like fraternal in nature, where they are like learning from each other, and people are starting to wonder if there's something going on, even though she's friends with, like, Cora is friends with his wife Stella, I think that's her name. And it only starts to become like, I'm at the point now where it's starting to like, maybe there's something between them, but I'm not entirely too sure. And then on the other side of that, we have the mythology of the Essex serpent, which I thought there was going to be a whole, like, I thought there was going to be a serpent. I'm starting to think that the serpent itself is a metaphor for like wrath, or it's a metaphor for like just God's consequences, because there seems to be a lot of like I said, opposites, but like allegorical themes between the two, like between the town, whereas like you have the pious and the not pious, and it's like the serpent is representative of the fight between the two, that this is like a serpent that is killing people, but in actuality it's like the town is killing people or something. I don't know, it seems again, it's literature, straight up literature. I'm getting a phone call. Who's calling me? I'm not taking a phone call right now. So I am a little struggling with finishing it right now. I almost DNF'd it, and I'm still considering it, just because I'm at the 60% mark and I still have all this time to go, and I am just not, it's not what I expected. It's not bad. It's just not what I had expected. And I have to finish all of these books that I checked out, minus The Blade Breaker, because I found out it's a sequel. I honestly think that this should be a book that I understand if you like read it, like listen to it. I understand if that works for you. I honestly think that due to the style and the diction of the language that is being used here, I think that the experience of reading this would be better suited to reading it paper. Like I said, this is definitely a book that like your English teacher would tell you to read, but from my perspective, I honestly think I will get more from this if I watch the TV show, just because I'm listening to it as, an audiobook, and I'm absorbing the information, but there's just so much going on that I think that me being more of a visual person, I will understand the metaphors and how things are opposite to each other. I will understand that better from a visual perspective instead of a like literary, instead of reading or listening to it. So I think that it's possible I could DNF this book right now and then go watch the series and then come back to it if I choose to. I do find it pretty interesting. It's just I feel like I'm not getting the full experience from just listening to the audiobook. But again, it is beautiful. The writing is beautiful, but I will have to determine, because I have to return these books, and I have others that I need to read. So if I determine that like I should stop reading this right now. I've kind of put it on hold. I've been trying to get through the family plot, and I'm almost done with it. I think I'm about 70% of the way through it right now. If I finish the family plot, and then I'm going to pick up the inheritance games, I'm trying to speed through the rest of the books that I have because I don't want to renew their leases from the library. I'm trying to like bring books back on time and not continuously renew my leases just because there are other people waiting. So, or at least I like that Libby tells me who is waiting on the book. So I read or listen to the book that is being waited on first, because if there's no line behind me, then I'm okay with renewing the lease. But if there's other people that are waiting, I'm going to read that one first just so somebody else can have the chance to read it. Because like I said, when I first tried to put Discovery of Witches on a hold, it told me I was going to wait like 22 weeks to get my hands on it because there were so many people ahead of me. So I would hate to be like the person who has the book and I just keep holding it. And I say that because I was that person last year before I was medicated. I was holding on to a physical copy of A Discovery of Witches for months because I like physically couldn't read the book and I didn't know why. Like I was struggling to read paper books, but a lot of it was because just my concentration shifted better to be able to read like ebook formats better. And also I was unmedicated, so I couldn't focus. So I think that by the time I get my hands on the book again and I give my chance to read the book again, I will be able to actually get through it. But as it stands right now, as far as the Essex Serpent goes, I think that I'm just going to focus on the other books that I'm trying to get through. And then, like, if I want to finish that after I finish, like, at least the family plot and the inheritance games, and I'm going to return Blade Breaker because, like I said, found out it's a sequel. And then I have the Sunbearer trials. Like I'm going to try to get through like those so that I can return them. And then if I have time, I might go back to the Essex Serpent. But yeah, that's how I feel about it at the moment. But again, it's a really good book. And then also, like I said, I'm about 70% of the way through the family plot. I think 73. I am 73% through. I'm on chapter 18. I picked up this book because I don't know how long ago this was, but Chandler read this book. I couldn't even tell you like what video it was where she talked about it. I just know that she did, and I like wrote it down as like ooh, I would like this book. So I picked up this book on recommendation of Chandler, and I think she rated it 3 stars. How I feel about it right now is, I think what I remember Chandler saying about it is that it wasn't particularly hard to figure out who did it, like who was responsible for like the murder, the capital M murder of Andy, but also the murders of all the women across decades of time. But I am struggling. Maybe I just don't read enough mystery, but I am struggling. Like, I feel like I have suspected every fucking character in this as being the capital M murderer, that I don't even know who did it anymore. So this is a family that has 4 kids. There's Charlie, the eldest, Tate, the eldest daughter, and then the twins, Dahlia and Andy. And every person in the family is named after a murder victim. So Charlie is named after the Lindbergh baby, Charles Lindbergh. Tate is named after Sharon Tate, who was a very, very famous victim, probably the most famous victim of the Manson family murders. Dahlia is, of course, named after the Black Dahlia, and Andy is named after Andy Borden, who was Lizzie Borden's father. So all of the family's quite kooky and quirky, to say the least. The mother says that their origin story comes from the fact that her parents were brutally murdered in a burglary / double murder where they were killed with the same guns that their company manufactured. They were gun manufacturers, hella rich. Afterwards, she sold their family mansion and moved to the place where they used to vacation during the summers, and she bought this house, married their dad, and had all these kids. She homeschooled the kids, kept them on the island away from the mainland, said that the others would not understand them, and kept the kids really isolated. The weirdest thing about them is that they have this kind of cultish relationship with the idea of murder victims. Like, it's taking true crime to like a new level where they're not like true crime people, but they are like honoring murder victims. Like, that's what they did, is like they learned how to read, write, and like do chemistry and like stuff like that. But they also like did book reports on murder victims, and the mother's whole logic was just that like there was a lot of evil in the world and she was trying to prepare them for like life outside, and every kid gets an inheritance when they turn 18. Charlie and Tate are much older than Andy and Dahlia, so they leave the island like 7 or 8 years before Andy and Dahlia would have been able to. They go out on their own. Charlie is like a Broadway actor. He's like kind of sort of successful. He hasn't really like done a lot, but he's done some off Broadway stuff or something. And then Tate has her like Instagram page. She's basically an influencer and she makes miniature doll houses. So she's an artist, but they're not just miniature doll houses, they're miniature crime scenes, like recreations of crime scenes. And it reminds me of like old school CSI. That was like one of their biggest like killers that they had to do. It was a serial killer that was recreating like crime scenes that he did, and like he was basically baiting Grisham with like clues about the murder and he would send these in and it lasted over a while. Like this, it was like the dollhouse like serial killer or something. So anyway, Tate does that kind of thing and she's gotten really, really popular in the true crime community. So anyway, all these kids are really isolated and full of a lot of anger. But anyway, Andy, Dahlia's twin, ran away on their 16th birthday and she hasn't seen him in 10 years. So she would be 26. And then, so her sister would be like 32 and then Charlie would be like 35 or something. So these are all like mid 20s to early 30s, and then their mom and then their dad. So they come back to the island because their dad just died and they have the little funeral and they honor him and stuff. He had a heart attack, basically face planted into his soup at dinner time and died right then and there. So they dig up the plot where they're going to bury him and they find a skeleton that is already there. The police come, do a little investigation, and they find out that the bones of the person that were in their father's grave were Andy. He was killed by his own axe. Dahlia has a recurring nightmare, kind of, that like because they have the namesake of somebody who was murdered, that they're going to suffer the same fate. So when they find out that Andy was murdered by his own axe, he used to go out into the woods and like whack at trees to take out his anger. And he was named after Lizzie Borden's father, who was killed with an axe. Dahlia is just like, oh shit, this is not good for my personal fucking nightmares. Awesome. Also, all of the characters are unlikable. I don't think I like a single fucking character. Like sometimes I like Dahlia, but most of the time I don't. So she is completely untrusting of everybody, but then also completely suspicious of everybody. She's being gaslit constantly by her family. She believes that like she's the only person who knew her twin and that nobody else could possibly have known him. She's like oddly protective about him in a very worrying way. The siblings are oddly close. So Dahlia and Andy were very close, but like Dahlia has like a very overwhelmingly worrisome attachment to her twin. So when he disappears and runs away, her whole life falls apart and she feels as though like she was the only person who ever truly knew him. And then Charlie and Tate, like they were closer in age, but like much older than the twins. The way that Dahlia describes their relationship and how close they are, it feels almost incestuous. Just a little bit. Like I honestly suspected like there were some like like context clues that like Charlie and Tate were like in an incestuous relationship, honestly, because they were so close. So after this, it turns into like a big murder investigation. Oh, also, I forgot there's a serial killer on the island that has killed like numerous women over the course of several decades. But then suddenly a decade ago, the last murder happened and not a single one has happened since. Oh shit, oh no. So all of these characters are completely unlikable. So at the point where I'm at right now, the mother is a neurotic, anxious mess. She's been doing nothing but baking cookies and avoiding questions. I honestly felt like she had something to hide, and she did. She admitted that her parents never were brutally murdered. They instead died of lung cancer, and she chose to lie and say that they were murdered because everyone said that because they died of lung cancer, that they deserved it or had it coming to them. So she started lying to people and saying they were murdered because then they would say, "Oh, I'm so sorry for your loss." And then they would feel a fraction of the loss that she felt, which is so fucked up. Like, so fucked up. I was exasperated that was real. The Charlie wants to make like the house into a museum, kind of, to allow people to come in and see that they're not monsters, but he's being oddly suspicious about everything. So when the cops search his room, he's like very on edge, and he's an alcoholic, and it's just not looking good. And then the sister, Tate, is just, she's making a miniature diorama of her brother's death. Like, basically, even though they found him 10 years later, she's like recreating his death. And it's so fucking weird. So let me launch into the portion of me discussing why, all of the reasons why I suspected every member of this family being the fucking murderer. Okay, so the brother, Charlie, is acting extremely weird. And also we found out that there was a crime scene photo where there was the last girl who was murdered like 10 years ago, right around the time when Andy disappeared. Charlie was sighted in the picture close by. So he was around the area. Also, all of the murder victims are branded with like a B on their ankle, and Dahlia finds the brand in the floorboards in Charlie's room because she realized it was really suspicious that Charlie was being weird about the cops searching his room. So she chooses to search his room and finds the brand and goes, "Oh shit, oh no." And this was the one thing the cops were looking for. But at the same time, I couldn't 100% think that he was doing it because the murders took place over several decades. So how could he commit murders when he was like 5? So I was like, so it can't be Charlie. Same thing with Tate. How could it be her when she was young, when a lot of the murders took place? But she also is described by the cop's son, who's like the new chief or whatever. The way that he describes Tate's dioramas are oddly accurate, that like it's almost like she was there, that they're oddly accurate. That was weird. Also, there are there's some photos that are discovered in like a passage between the parents' room and Tate's room that like Dahlia thinks Tate drew or Tate took. And then in the basement of the shed, of the tool shed, they find unbefore-seen crime scene photos taken by who, I don't know, but they framed the groundskeeper. I honestly thought, I thought there was pretty convincing evidence that the sister did it. But at the same time, I was like, she was also too young. And then I was like, what if it's Dahlia and we're doing a Beautiful Mind thing where she does not realize like all the things that are going on in her brain because she's like, she has a multiple personality thing. But then I was like, that doesn't make sense either because she's even younger. And then I was like, what if it was Andy? And then it was like, that's impossible. He was too young. So I am convinced, I think, that none of the kids did it. Then I thought of the dad who could have done it. So there was a cop that used to harass them when all the kids were young, and he has since gotten early on stage dementia, and his son is the new like police officer that's like snooping around, and he is possibly convinced that like maybe the dad had a hand in it, but they're not exactly sure because his theory was that what if Andy found out that his dad was the Blackburn killer, and so he kills Andy, buries him in his own grave so that they wouldn't discover that Andy was dead actually until the father died, and that he would not be held accountable because then the only time they would dig up their father's grave is to bury him. So he would have to be dead. So he was like, that's possible or something. I think that the most convincing thing I've heard so far is that there's another family that lives on the island. It's a grandfather and a granddaughter, and the grandfather is very overprotective because his wife and his daughter left him. So the granddaughter was like in love with Andy, and they used to meet up at night. And I'm convinced, I think at this point, that the grandfather and the groundskeeper were in on it together because they were like best buddies from high school. So I'm like wondering if maybe they were in cahoots together because the groundskeeper knew about what was in the shed and asked Dahlia to help him get rid of it. So I'm wondering if maybe that's a part of it, but I honestly do not fucking know. I have a quarter of the book left, and I do not know who could possibly have done this. And then I thought, what if it was Daddy Cop, who now has dementia? Because he was the one who was snooping around, but then how would he get into the basement? Oh, and the other thing they found in Charlie's floor was not just the brand that was used to like brand the victims of the serial killer, but they found the skeleton key for the shed basement. He had a copy of the basement key where the crime scene photos were, and like that was like the serial killer layer or something. He had a key. But then he was like, but it couldn't have possibly be me. I was like so young, da da da. And I'm like, huh, I am I just dumb? Like anybody who's read this book, am I just dumb that I haven't caught on to this yet? Have I just not read enough mystery that I'm not good at like picking up context clues? Because then I thought the mom could have done it because she was such a neurotic mess and like she was obsessing over making cookies. It was almost like thriller-esque. Like it was almost like it had a little bit of a horror element that she was like going insane over the fact that her husband just died and her son was found in her husband's grave, and now they're questioning everything and tearing the house apart, that she was like going crazy, losing her mind. So I started to wonder if maybe the mother did it, but then I was like, why would she kill her own child? And then I'm just going to go finish the book and I'll come back to y'all later cuz like I'm confused. So I'm going to go back and see if like there's an epiphany or something. And then I'll come back and be like, oh man, I didn't see this coming, or I should have known that. So I'm going to go ahead and go do that because I've been rambling about this for like 27 minutes. So I'm going to go do that real quick. BRB. Not to check back in so soon, but like we're at the point where Dahlia found the brand in Charlie's closet, right? And he looks at Tate, and Dahlia's like, don't look at her, look at me. Like I said, the slightly incestuous older siblings. So she's like, look at me, don't look at her. And Tate is like, you should tell them. And I'm like, tell them what? So tell them what, Charlie? Because he said that when the first woman was killed, he was 6. What if... Oh, now I'm going to start spitballing again. What if the dad was the killer and, like, Charlie tagged along? Because they went on, like, these little hunting trips together. What if, like, they were hunting women and, like, Charlie was in on it? He was complicit in his dad's crimes. Ooh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. I might be onto something. Oh, okay.
A few moments later.
Finally, Charlie drops his hands. I got the brand from the chest in the room beneath the shed. The sentence startles me, but I force myself to stay rigid. There was nothing in that chest. I checked. There was nothing in it, Charlie says quietly, because I broke into it. I picture the splintered wood on top of the trunk. When? I ask. Because she said it looked like it had been broken apart by an axe, like Andy's axe. Turn my light back on. Can I just say, I could not read this book at night because it freaked me the fuck out. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm just a little bit of a bitch when it comes to scary stuff, but this isn't even that scary. It just kind of freaked me out. He answers me slowly. After Fritz found the body, Andy, I knew it was only a matter of time before the police searched the shed. I waited until the middle of the night when Kraft and everyone else was gone. I didn't know the combination to the lock on the chest, so I chopped it open with Fritz's axe. That was you? I'd been certain it was Andy, proof that he'd uncovered secrets that someone would kill to protect. But now I stutter onto another thought. Why did you go down there? How did you even know about that room? Charlie swallows. It was just the iron in the chest that night, but that's where the dress is. He stops, his mouth moving silently before he continues. I planned to take the photographs too, but they weren't like that back then, hung up like that. They used to be in the chest, and I couldn't breathe looking at the wall. I barely made it out without throwing up. I feel my pulse thrumming, a taut string plucked. Charlie, I manage. How did you know it was in that chest? I stare at the key overlapping the brand on my palm. Where did you get that key? Charlie's gaze darts toward Tate. It's okay, she says softly, and there are tears shimmering on her cheeks. They're so weird. Those older siblings are so weird. Their connection is like, again, mildly incestuous, and it freaks me out. He closes his eyes, mouth shut tight, inhaling through his nose. I got it from the Blackburn killer, he says. Beside me, Tate releases a breath. I find myself holding mine. I got it from Dad. Oh my God, I knew it! Wait a second! Wait a minute! What? No, Mom shouts. I fall back against the counter, my hips stabbed by its edge. Why would you say that, Mom cries. Why would you even think that of him? Because I was there, Charlie bellows. I was involved with it, always. Wait a minute! Wait, so my crackpot theory I just had 3 minutes ago was maybe right. Silence plows through the room. I'm stuck inside it, embraced too tightly by the quiet. When sound finally surges back, it bursts from Mom's lips, her words coming out like wails. What does that mean, Charlie? It's a while before he answers. My heart pounds out the seconds, my head becoming so light I worry it'll fade away. It started when I was 6, he said, voice flat. I watched his lips move. Dad came into my room late one night, yanked the blankets off of me, told me we're going hunting. Oh, wait, yes, the hunting trips! Holy shit! Oh my God, wait. Oh my God, wait. Okay, so they went on all these hunting trips and they like brought back deer and he hung deer on the wall. Wait, no, that doesn't make any sense because the women were found. I was about to be like, what if he was like serving the kids like human meat all their life? Like that doesn't make any sense. They found the women's bodies. Charlie knocks his fist against his forehead once, twice. I flinch both times. I didn't question it, even though it was dark out, even though he didn't take the rifle. He had this bag I'd never seen before, and I went with him. I followed him to the road that leads to the shore, which I did think was weird. He only ever hunted in the woods. But suddenly Dad stopped and we just stood there waiting for, he shakes his head, I don't know what. My heart keeps banging. I grip the counter to remain upright. Nothing happened, he says. We waited, and when I asked him what was going on, he told me to keep my mouth shut. Finally, we went back home. He sent me back to bed, and in the morning, I thought I'd dreamed it. Until it happened again a few nights later, the same thing, pulling me out of bed, leading me to that road, only this time we heard footsteps in the distance, someone's shoes on the gravel, coming up from the shore. Dad looked down the road and he whispered to me, said there was a woman coming, and I had to make myself cry. I had to pretend to be lost and scared and alone so that she'd stop to help me. I didn't know but then he pinched me hard and I did start crying. He shoved me out into the lane and crouched back into the bushes, and when the woman came, she looked so concerned. She asked where I lived, who my parents were, and I was so scared I didn't understand what was happening, but something in me knew to be terrified. He pauses, kneading his knuckles against his closed eyes. The woman got down next to me and she kind of gathered me in her arms, and then she was jerked away, making these horrible noises. I almost couldn't see, but it was Dad. He had a rope around her neck. He was strangling her. Charlie trails off. The room feels close to airless. Then she went limp. He didn't hesitate. He grabbed a tarp from his bag, the same kind he used for deer. He wrapped her up and headed back home with her in his arms, and then the shed. He took her to the shed. He went down to that room with the tarp, the woman in the tarp, the woman who had crouched down to see if she could help me. Choking sound grates in Charlie's throat. I didn't understand what was happening. On either side of me, Mom and Tate are crying, but my tears won't come. My eyes feel hot, itchy, and I realize now I haven't been blinking. He made me keep watch that night, Charlie says, up in the shed, and through the hole I could see her head on the floor, the skin all purple around her eyes like someone had punched her. I saw him wrap a blue scarf around her neck. A blue scarf, Melinda Wharton, the only woman who wasn't discovered in the dress. No, Mom moans. Over and over she says it. A chorus of cries beneath Charlie's story. Then he wrapped her in the tarp again and carried her from that room, and he made me follow him again, but this time we went down to the ocean and we walked along the shore for a long time, even as he stumbled beneath the weight of her. Then he walked to the water, pushed her out. The whole time I didn't say anything, but he'd asked if anyone saw us on our way back. We'd tell them we found a woman in the ocean and we're on our way to get help. He muttered something more to himself, like, a man can't be a murderer if he's out with his son. Oh, that's weird. He told me it was our secret, one that no one else would understand. He says, if you tell anyone what you did tonight, you'll be in big trouble. They'll take you away and throw you in jail, and I won't be able to stop them? Mom sobs, and I feel her hand close over mine on the counter. When Charlie looks at her. His face is filled with disgust at himself or dad. I don't know. This is all crazy. I'm gonna go finish this. I'm not gonna continue to read this to y'all, but like this is I could honestly makes sense now. Am I a dumb bitch? Perhaps, but I started to suspect it was the dad, but then I was suspecting Charlie being a part of it because they found the brand. So like I did eventually like come to it. Like it does make sense. But I don't feel stupid for like questioning everybody else because I think that's the point. So now I'm wondering why Tate knew but didn't tell Dahlia, and then what happened to Andy? I guess we're gonna find out. The dad was the real killer and like groomed the boys to like be his accomplices so they would keep his secret, right? But Dahlia is still questioning whether or not her dad killed her brother. She's like, yeah, he killed all those women, but did he kill my brother? And like the only two people who knew other than their dad were Charlie, the oldest brother, and Tate because Charlie told her. So now, and Charlie's starting to act a little weird. So I'm starting to wonder if maybe Charlie killed Andy. And that's why he's been so antsy about everything that's going on. So that's where I'm at right now. I was like, I think Charlie killed Andy because he seems pretty unhinged, to be completely honest. So that's where I'm at right now. I'll keep you posted. And the main reason why I think the brother did it, I forgot to address this, is because they're missing the part where Andy wrote the note, the only way to leave is to never come back or something. They couldn't figure out what was the note. So like when they said like, oh, the dad did it, I was like, that doesn't wrap up the fact that Andy wrote the note. Who wrote the note? Where did the note come from? And they just mentioned it. So I think that's where that came from because Charlie would have had access to Andy's handwriting, right? So he would have been able to forge his handwriting, right? To like forge it and make it look like his brother ran away. Because Andy was like getting eaten up by all of his guilt. So maybe he said to Charlie, like, I can't take this secret anymore. I'm going to go to the police. And then Charlie was like, no, you're not. And then he killed him with his own axe, wrote the note, forged his handwriting to make it look like he ran away. And now like the guilt is eating him alive. And like his way to like make this memorial was to like try to get it out, but it's not working. So I think that Charlie may be a mastermind behind all this. So I don't know. I've got 13% of this book left. So I don't know. In conclusion, I rated the family plot 3 stars because while the plot, of the book was intriguing, kept me interested. I mean, if the mystery and how it all happened wasn't so intriguing, I wouldn't have continued it. But the characters themselves were so unlikable, like base wise, that I couldn't get through it. As an example, just to say, like, Dahlia is annoying, not annoying, but she is distrustful to the point of it being a fault, and she is very self-absorbed in the idea that like the only person who truly knew her was her twin, and the only person she ever truly knew was also her twin. But in actuality, she was like faced with the reality that she didn't know him at all. And then she was like, she's very distrustful of like any friends or anybody who tries to come into her life. And she's mean. Like, she's straight up mean, especially to Ruby. Ruby, who is, also grieving her brother, but Dahlia doesn't want to admit that like her brother potentially had somebody else in his life other than her. Like, she was very jealous. I think that's a good way to put it. She was very jealous and territorial over her twin. To put it lightly, the sibling relationships in this book are borderline incestuous, the way that they're written, both with Charlie and Tate and with Andy and Dahlia, but only it was one-sided. Dahlia's entire life was Andy. Like, she felt very territorial over somebody else loving him, and she was straight up mean to Ruby all the time. And she knew it too. That was the other thing, is that she straight up knew it. Like, the context of the interactions was just like, yeah, I know I'm being mean to this girl, but she's wrong and I'm going to do it anyway. So it was just she was just unlikable. Like if you're ignorant to the fact that you're a mean bitch and then you come around to it, that's different. But if you know you're being a mean bitch to somebody who doesn't deserve it, you're just being a mean bitch on purpose, and that's not cool. And then the sister was just a weirdo who just made dioramas of murder scenes and used it as her coping mechanism. I think the only redeeming thing about this book is the inclusion of the character of Greta, who is the person who works in the cafe underneath where Dahlia lives. She has an apartment on the mainland. And Greta is a true crime girly, and she's like obsessed with true crime to the point of it being glaringly obvious that it's meant to be seen as a negative thing. I thought that this was portrayed well. True crime girlies truly make me angry, and I don't necessarily like the infatuation and romanticization of serial killers and murder and true crime. Like, when somebody rationalized true crime to me once as like a fascination that women have with learning about serial killers because it is a way for them to validate the kind of over the shoulder mentality that all women have, that they're like constantly looking over their shoulders, and it's like knowing whether like how somebody acted and how they targeted somebody or what they did or how to get out of a situation. It's like you're constantly prepping for the fact that you might be somebody's next victim. I understood that rational aspect of why true crime girlies are so obsessed with it, but when it gets to the point where they're like obsessed and romanticizing it, this was also brought up with the fact that Tate was not only just an artist, but she had fans that were coming in from all over the place to basically gawk at the stuff and make comments. There was one girl who was looking at the diorama of their dead brother in a grave and said, "Is it just me, or does he look like he would be kind of hot? Like, he's a mystery. He doesn't have a face. Like, he would be kind of hot." Like, it was basically making fun of those people. I think of the Jeffrey Dahmer documentary that just came out on Netflix, and how there's an equal amount of horror at the fact that this was done in such an insensitive way without the consent or inclusion of the victims' families, but also the fact that there's like two sets of people who are like, how could you not know about Jeffrey Dahmer? Like, how could you not know that this thing happened? It should be common knowledge. And the people who were obsessing over the fact that this was like very gruesome, or wanted it to be more gruesome or more graphic, or were basically like foaming at the mouth over Evan Peters. Like, those people, like, it was like two sets of different people. And then on the other side, it was people who were like, this is fucked up, because they didn't even include the victims' families in the creation, nor did they get any consent. They didn't get anything. It was done extremely insensitively by Netflix. I've never seen it, nor will I. Just because I don't like that. Like, imagine, and they probably will, imagine if they do something like that with the Columbine shooters. And I mean, I hate to bring up, again, something that's really insensitive, but I can picture that happening, unfortunately, because true crime is such a big moneymaker right now. And I just think about how insensitive that would be. So I think that the one thing that this book does well is the fact that it's bringing up the fact that true crime is not something to be obsessed over. It's not a hobby. It's not anything. It's people are horrible and cruel, and you shouldn't be romanticizing or being fangirls over crimes, over murder. Like, you shouldn't be doing that. So I think that's the one redeeming factor of this book that made me believe that there was a message to say, or at least that's the message I got. So otherwise, the book was rated 3 stars. I'm going to go start the Inheritance games now. But I got to get it moving. I mean, it's Thursday. I'm off today. I asked for the entire day off. So I'm off today, but I work all day tomorrow and Saturday and then Sunday morning. So I'm going to try to get as much of the Inheritance games done between all of that, so I will check in with you guys later. Yes. Hello, everybody. Giving you a late Friday to early Saturday update. So I was working all day, so I did not get a lot of reading done, but I just read. I just did a 20-minute reading sprint and got through about 50 pages. So I'm about at the halfway mark in the Inheritance games. I'm really enjoying it so far. I am intrigued by the characters. The brothers are really interesting. I'm liking the little bit of the formation of the love triangle between Avery, Jameson, and Grayson, although like it's seemingly a little obvious to me that like Jameson is like better for her, but she's like drawn to Grayson in a way that makes me think that like she and Grayson end up together in the end, but I'm not sure. Like this is going to go on for a while probably, but it's very clear that like one of them is obviously like much nicer to her and better for her, but the way that she like keeps going back about how she's attracted to the other one makes me think that like this is going to go on for a while. I am really intrigued by the mystery and the puzzles that have been proposed and how it all kind of fits together. I am interested in how this is going to continue. I am also interested in Avery in general. She seems like a really interesting character. I've been saying the word interesting a lot, but at the part of the story that I'm in right now, she was just approached by one of Tobias's daughters, Zara, who is the aunt to the Hawthorne brothers, and she runs the Hawthorne Foundation, and she told Avery that she can, like, Zara can teach her about what it's like to have a chair on the foundation. And Avery kind of has this like flash in her mind of like all the things that she can do and like all the things that she can help with being that rich now. And it's like she can help people who are in poverty, she can help people who are homeless, she can like solve world hunger. And Zara's just like, ah, yes, you're young and optimistic, like the light will fade from your eyes eventually. But I really enjoyed Avery's optimism, even though like thus far as a character we haven't really been presented with evidence that she's an optimistic person. She seems to be like very flighty. Like if anything, she's extremely flighty. And when all of this is going down, the first instinct that she has is to run away, but she can't. So she seems to not like confinement, and she seems to be like pretty claustrophobic when it comes to space. But to see her have such an optimistic outlook on what she can do to change the world, I think is refreshing and interesting, and I'm excited to see where that goes. I think the only complaint that I could have at this point is how short the chapters are. And usually I would not mind that because then it is easier for me to break up my reading sprints, because if I have to end, like the chapter will end within 1 to 5 pages. But this becomes cumbersome for me like when I'm reading for a longer period of time. And it's like instead of the book feeling like an experience or in like feeling like a movie where every chapter is like a scene in a movie that has no breaks, that is just like like the styles of movies like 1914 is a really good example where the movie is edited in a way that it looks like there's no cuts, or there's only 1 or 2 cuts, that it looks like you're experiencing it in real time. So when it's like that in a book, it's like it's all part of the experience as a reader, as if you are a part of the story. So what my criticism about this is that it feels instead like that, like you're a part of the story, or you're a fly on the wall, or you're an omniscient presence. It is instead feeling like stop motion, but also like very quick cuts in a movie, like an action film, where it's just going from over here to over there and things are happening so quickly that I think it feels less like the experience of a movie, like I said, but more of the experience of like a TV show where everything is broken down into bite-sized little pieces. And so the experience that you're getting from it is not as deep as it could be. It's very surface level in nature. And maybe maybe Jennifer Barnes is doing that on purpose, because the whole nature of this book is that everything is a mystery and it's supposed to be like fast paced, like solving of the final puzzle kind of thing. So I'm wondering if maybe this was done on purpose as a stylistic choice, because they're trying to solve this puzzle and not every puzzle piece takes like hours to decode. It could be as easy as using a cipher, like they did with the red will. They basically use the red acetate to the red will as a cipher. So the steps that they take to solve this puzzle, the steps are little, but the puzzle is long. There's it's like a 1,000 piece puzzle, and everything that they have to do in the steps is one puzzle. So it feels like a lot, but it's not. And I think that that might contribute to the story of how it feels of it being like quick or fast paced or off kilter for the characters involved, because all of their lives have been kind of turned upside down. So they're all on high alert. They're all trying to figure out what's going on. They're all trying to figure out the final puzzle. So it's a lot of basically natural reactions of like deers in headlights, like moving your head around, like moving to the next stimuli, that perhaps this is what it's supposed to be like, that this experience is supposed to be like that kind of you're just looking at everything at face value. And that might change later when like the puzzle becomes deep enough to the point where they have to look past the surface level intentions and the surface level meanings of things in front of them. They need to look deeper, and in that case the chapters might get longer and descriptions might get longer. All of this to say that like maybe this formatting choice is stylistic in nature to the way of the storytelling, but for me it is quite jilted. It interrupts my train of thought a little bit, and it feels like an episode of Riverdale, and that's the best way I can describe it. It just feels like it's like a 5-minute snippet of a scene of a very chaotic TV show, and every chapter is drastically different from the next. So I do struggle a little bit because it's very like shifting focus, like every like 3 pages. So that has been a struggle for me. But like I said, I'm almost halfway through the book and I am enjoying it nonetheless. So far, I've been able to kind of get over that. So I'm going to go ahead and get ready for bed because I double again in the morning and my back fucking hurts. So I'm going to shower, go bed, and then I will give you guys another update tomorrow. I need to try to finish these ASAP. I need to finish this book. I need to read The Sunbearer Trials, and I need to read The Secret Scones and Book Society, I think it's called. I need to finish that. So The Essex Serpent, I'm not really that concerned, just because I don't know, it just feels not right. I don't know, it just not right, but like it's not what I expected. So I don't know if it's meant to be a literary experience, like it's meant to be like not just a casual reading time. It's meant to be like literature. Like I got to sit down in my armchair and read it by the fire. If that's the case, I want to give it the due diligence that it deserves, and I want to give it its moment instead of listening to it on audiobook at 1.8x speed and kind of blazing through it. If I'm meant to absorb every single word as a part of the narrative, maybe I should give it its time. But there are other people waiting, so I may let it go, or I may come back to it. I just don't want to hang on to it for too long, but I do want to finish the story. It's just I think that the medium that I'm absorbing it in is just not how it was meant to be taken, and maybe I would get more from the story if I watched the TV show. I probably will. Like I'll probably get an Apple Plus trial just to watch this, but and nothing else, but or ask around if any of my friends have it. But with that being said, guys, it is almost 1 a.m, and I am trying my best to change my sleep schedule and get better. I am not turning this light on. My head is killing me. So, I never did an outro because I thought that I would have more to say. But I have been in debilitating pain. I don't know how I made it through work. I worked a double on Saturday and I worked Sunday morning. It's Sunday night now. I've gotten no reading done. I've started rereading a book for next week's video. But other than that, I ain't got shit done. My head is killing me. My back hurts. Arms are sweaty. There's vomit on my sweater already. I am going to go to sleep. But I wanted to come in and do an outro for you guys. Anyway, thank you so much for being here. Remember to drink water and be nice to each other and exude kindness and empathy with everything that you do. And I will see you guys in the next reading vlog where we will finish the Inheritance games today, Monday, which is the start of a new week for a reading vlog. And I'm going to return it and all the other books that I'm done with and continue with the week of things we're going to be reading. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.